That girl up here looks like Sonia Root, my ex-girlfriend. In fact, I have a crush on a Palladian woman. Her name is Batar.
Who?
It's a Palladian.
A Palladian woman is an extraterrestrial that comes from star Orion.
And you have a crush on her? Or
Yes, her name is Batar, and she's Billy Myers, she's an extraterrestrial that visits Billy Myers.
Have you guys ever engaged in a sexual relationship?
No, I haven't even met her, but I see her on a lot of Colonel Wendell Stevenson's UFO videos. And she's been photographed as well on the spaceship.
Does she look like that?
She looks like this. Batar looks like her. I can teach you some of the Palladian language. I want this is something else. I met somebody where I sell my cartoons in the park. I don't know if I should say this. There's a person I met in the park that, I don't know. I'll just keep that to myself. That's easy, you know.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Chicago, and I lived in Washington, D.C.
And how was your childhood?
Well, I had a rough childhood. I grew up in Chicago on the South Side, mostly in the gangs, because I came from a family that was well educated. I got good grades in school, so I faced a lot of jealousy growing up in the black area. Many times my sisters and I got beat up, and because there was jealousy. And then when I went to high school, my parents moved to Park Forest, Illinois, and it was a very conservative Republican area. And it was like near where Ronald Reagan is from, and it was like a lot of cornfields, and it was like a big open field. And I went to Westwood. I was at my last year of grammar school, and I went to Wildwood High School. And there was this white guy that was real friendly to me. He was blonde. He was in my class, and one time he came into the class. It was with radiation burns all over his face and his body. And he was just frightened. And he told everybody in the class, I was abducted by a UFO, and my parents couldn't find me in 3 days, and they made a police report and everything. And I, at the time, made fun of him and like anybody else. Oh, this stuff doesn't exist. It's make-believe. It's phony. The following night, my parents lived on Westwood Drive and back of a big field that used to be a lake, and they tried to fill it in to build homes on it. They couldn't build homes on it because the homes would sink. So it was a big open field in the back of Orchard and Westwood, and my parents owned a house right in back. It was a big open field. So one night, the same night that I made fun of this guy and condemned this guy, I had an abduction experience. It gets very hot and humid in the Midwest. So I had the glass window doors open, and these weird-looking beings came in my room. I tried to cover my head. They pulled the sheet out for me, carried me, like 8 of them carried me out to the outdoors. Next thing I knew, I was beamed up in a light in a spaceship. They took samples of my hair. I have a ring that they cut around there that hasn't left.
You know what? Dan's going to get a close-up of this.
And they cut marks. They cut a ring here. They cut marks that never left.
Do you still have a manual focus on it?
See that ring there? Now you got it. Now you got it. Yeah. They cut a ring in there, which is silicone.
Can you put it in the light, maybe?
Okay.
Maybe, actually, sit back where you were.
Okay.
You know, pull back a little bit.
Sit back where you were, and just put it in. Yeah. See if we can show it in the light.
You had it better when you had it before.
I can sort of see it. That's good. I like that.
Okay, you had it better before. Right there. Right there. There's a ring. See, you got the ring right there. They cut and put a silicone, tracking device in me. And they took samples of my skin. They took samples of my hair. And my parents thought I was gone to be with my grandmother, Louise Gordon Schroeder. Gordon is her married name. And in Chicago. They couldn't find me, and they were Christian Scientists, and they don't believe in going to doctors. So the silicone was never removed from my arm, and it was the most scaring experience I had. But it's planted a seed in me, an interest in UFOs. I did not tell people that I believed in UFOs, and I had this experience until I started seeing TV shows about UFOs. I started seeing books about UFOs. And then I met a woman named Linda Moulton Howe, who was my favorite UFO, and Wendell Stevenson, that says you don't have to be afraid to let people know that you had this experience. There's other people that have had abduction experiences. And I joined a group called MUFON, which was a support group where other people believe in UFOs. And we meet at the Garland Hotel the third Wednesday of the month in North Hollywood. And there are other people that have had abduction experience and seen UFOs. And then the other time I saw a UFO was I belonged to the 4-H club. And the 4-H club was in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. It's where they teach you farming and gardening and everything. And I had to do night watch. And I had to go milk the cows that night. I looked up in the sky and it says, this looks like a moving star. And then it looked like Saturn. And then when it got close, there was a large gold frisbee, like a kid with red and green lights under it. It shot the light down and then went in the sky. Okay, then when I used to be a cook in the Navy, I heard some high-up generals talking about that they had UFOs on a place called Area 51, Dream Lake. And there's where they have crash UFO ships and where the government has confiscated. That's where the computers and the music disc came from. I said, oh, this is interesting. So I started buying books about UFOs. Then my ex-wife, who I used to be married to, told me that she saw UFOs in Canada. We saw a UFO together. We had a sighting together when we went up to Hemet, and we saw a huge, large dish turned upside down that was gold and had lights rotating around it. And so this planted a seed to believe in UFOs, having this experience. And I've got more enthusiastic about it. And then the weirdest thing I had, I don't know how to explain this to you, but I'm going to say it anyway. They say that we're not alone in the universe. There's people living among us. I was selling my portraits at one of the parks, and a man came up to me and told me he was from outer space. And he could read my thought telepathically. I don't believe you. When he took off his glasses, he had a white light in his eyes, like we have a black dot in his eyes. So I knew this man was not jiving, this man was not lying. He says, he told me things about me. He says, I know you're not only an artist, but you're a musician. And he says, I can tell that you're part white and a part American Indian. I says, that's right. And he told me things about me, like he was reading me. And then when he opened up the palm of his hands, he had no lines in his hands like we human beings have. And he not only told me, he told me what year I was born, like he could just read right through me. I was so spellbound, I couldn't talk or say nothing. And then I started seeing UFOs where I was working at the Music Center at the Hollywood Bowl, these unusual cigar shapes and stuff. And so reading books and buying UFO tapes, they taught me how to send thoughts out of them. Christian Science teaches you how you can heal an object or send thoughts on it from being far away, changes things into thoughts. I learned to speak to these people in the flying saucers through thought. And I would bring my binoculars whenever I saw a UFO. I said, where do you come from? What is your interest? I'd like to be a contact for you. And many times they would send vibrations back to me and tell me, we're here to learn more about your planet Earth. And I had a conversation going on with a UFO and people in a spacecraft for 1 year and 8 months. And last summer, exact in August, the flying saucer came that was a triangular shape. And he said to me, and had a red light at the end, you need to go to your apartment. there's going to be some dangerous gun shooting. And I was obedient, went up to my apartment. After I went up to my apartment, the whole side, it was a Sunday night, the whole side of Beverly Boulevard, everybody that was walking down there was gunshot down by some street gangs.
Wow.
And I called the LAPD, the Rampart Police, and I told them that there was some gun shooting and people were shot and killed. He says, how did you find this out? And I says, it's this UFO disc that I've been communicating with. And the police did a stupid thing. They sent about 3 or 4 police helicopters, circled the building continuously, and they chased the disc away, the square triangulated disc away.
When was this?
This was in August of last year, year 2000.
What do you think the extraterrestrials think of public access?
Huh?
Do the extraterrestrials have any opinion on public
Yeah,
access?
well, yes, they do. An extraterrestrial lady that was visiting me, I've also had extraterrestrials come into my room and talk to me. And she says, I want you to do a UFO show. He says, I did my first UFO show up with Bibles and UFO. I want you to do a UFO shows to tell us that our presence is real. It's not make-believe, it's not fiction. And this extraterrestrial woman looked like a regular white woman and had that weird dot in her eye. Excuse me, she said she was a Palladian, and she wanted me to do a show about UFOs. I never had done a show about UFOs, and she directed me telepathically to use the Book of Enoch, to use the Book of Ezekiel, which I used, and I did a 3-parter on UFOs, or UFOs and Bible Stories Real.